Hello there. Right now I should be packing. I'm actually going out to LA tomorrow because I have a wedding to go to. But instead of doing that, I'm going to give you my games and then albums in a different video, like of the year so far. I'm not going to do this in any order. I'm not going to order them or do anything. Like, normally I say at the end of the year lists or whatever, like, oh, the order doesn't really matter because it's just my tastes, and like you will probably order it differently because everyone has a different preference and all that stuff, right? But I'm not going to order them yet because I straight don't want to, and there we go. So we're going to do games in this video, and then the video that comes up after this is going to be albums. And here's the deal, right? I have 4 games because I haven't played a lot this year, and there's a lot of games I want to play. So what I've done is you have 4 games here that I really like that I played this year. And then we have 3 games that have already come out that I want to play before the end of the year. And then we have 3 other games that haven't come out yet that I'm really looking forward to that might end up being in the final 5 that I put in at the end of the year, right? So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to stop rubbing my nose. First game I want to, and basically I'll just like give my brief thoughts. I mean, some of these I already have other videos on this channel talking about them, but I think the purpose of this is just be like, hey, how do I feel now since I've let it sit a bit longer, right? So the first one I don't think I actually made a video on this channel about. It's Dark Souls Remastered, and it came out, and I haven't spent a ton of time with it, but I do think that in terms of like a remaster, just in terms of like, giving a new coat of paint to a game that already exists, I think it did a really good job. There's an argument to be made that they could have fixed things. They could have like fixed some areas of the game which maybe aren't too great, especially in the latter half of the game. But I think for a lot of people, if you change stuff like that, I think then that kind of takes away from the element of it being a remaster. It's the whole point of that you're getting the good and the bad. The games already came out, it already released, it already got its critical reception. It's sort of like the Crash remix, right? Like, they didn't unify the physics across all 3 games, so that's not changing the fact that Crash wanted some really stupid levels in it. And they didn't change those levels, they didn't add anything to them. They're the way they are, and you have to deal with it. And that's just the way it is. They even added the exploits to sort of, so everything that was in the original game is in this remake, right? And same applies to Dark Souls. Now, it's a little bit more true in Dark Souls because they sort of just took the DS3 engine and then modified it, I believe, to go back to like how it was in the original Dark Souls. But there are modifications that people were like, yeah, let's make that, but they chose not to do that. The only thing that really got ported over was the online from Dark Souls 3. And while some people are annoyed by that, I personally don't care either way. I've never wanted to play Dark Souls with other people. I've always done it myself, and I've always largely preferred to just be on my own. Sometimes I will go onto the online and become a human for one reason or another. But usually, then the invasions are sort of like other players or NPCs. Like, I'm not looking to invade other people's worlds, and I'm not looking to collaborate with other people. So I don't really, I guess that change doesn't really affect me personally, and I don't really know how the online has evolved throughout those entries. But I think it did a really good job at moving things over. I think it looks great on the PS4. I imagine it would look also great on the other systems, and especially the beefed up, PS4 Pro, Xbox One X kind of situation. And the game actually runs well on PC natively, which it cannot be said about the original. So I think they did a really good job with that. Next one is also a game that came out prior. I finally played Hollow Knight now that it came out on the Switch, and I freaking love it. I haven't beaten it because I don't have a lot of time, but I've put some hours in. I really enjoy what they're doing. I do think the beginning of the game is a little bit slow, and I wish that maybe 1 or 2 of the moves that you get pretty early on were just given to you from the start to help speed things up pace-wise, I guess. But that's a really, really small complaint. I think in terms of like, people throw around Souls-like and stuff like that, but I think in terms of like translating that sort of Souls formula into 2D, I think Hollow Knight actually does it best, despite lacking some of the sort of input laggy sort of commitment that you might get in the traditional Souls games. When I played Salt and Sanctuary, which sort of featured that massive, like, super long animations and input lag and stuff like that, it it worked, and I really liked the game. It was on my Game of the Year list that year. I do think it was a little bit clunky, and I definitely come into Hollow Knight, and I definitely prefer its approach. I think making it more of like a Metroidvania kind of thing, and how its world is set up is really nice. I wish, honestly, some of the world design aspects from something like Hollow Knight and Metroid games would kind of be pulled into the more 3D Souls-like games. But that just tends not to happen. Usually it's like you just go from one area to the next area, and there's a fairly linear progression throughout it, and usually there's pretty arbitrary unlocks that are blocking off areas that you could already see or go to. So I think Hollow Knight does a really good job at being like, hey, you get this ability, now use this ability in the area you already were in before, and then you get to a new area, and it's like really cool. So I really like that aspect of it. I also like how there's not this there a lot of things that are typically represented by numbers in the game are represented not by numbers, and I think it's sort of more organic that way. This is just a me thing. I think when you pull up a stat screen, you just see all these numbers all over the place. I think it could be really intimidating for a lot of people, and even though Hollow Knight is a fairly inaccessible game in terms of the skill required, I do think that it opens up the medium, and I guess this game in particular, to more people as a result. So I have to praise that as well. Next one is yet another remake. It's Shadow of the Colossus, the PS4 version. I own the PS3 thing that has Eco and Shadow of the Colossus, but I never played Shadow of the Colossus because I wanted to beat Eco first. But then I didn't beat Eco, and then I got the PS4 version, and I beat it, and I really, really like the game. It does have some problems. Certain colossi are very clunky and not good, but similar to Dark Souls, how people could argue that, oh, you should fix this or something like that. I would argue the same applies to the colossi in Shadow of the Colossus. Some are better than others, but they are the way they were in the original game for the most part. As far as my understanding, there are very few things that mechanically changed. Most complaints someone would have with the PS2 game or the PS3 version of the PS2 game stay true in the PS4 version, but the game's freaking beautiful, and I really enjoyed it, and I couldn't not include it. Last game I want to talk about is Celeste. It came out earlier this year, and when it came out I was very annoyed because there was a game that I had played the year before, which ended up being my game of the year, which I argued did a lot of the things that Celeste did, and people were praising it for, but better. And I was sort of annoyed that this game that means so much to me personally, and sort of really affected me and like blew my mind as a player through its twist, which Celeste doesn't have a twist like that, by the way. It sort of bugged me, and I think in that video and in discussions about the game, I don't think I've gotten across clearly the fact that I still freaking love this game. I go back and I try the B-sides and go through and do that. I do think that largely, aside from a few specific mechanics, it is pretty mechanically tight and satisfying. The movement's really solid. The dashes feel punchy, which is what they're supposed to feel like. But there's very few times when I'm like, this is stupid. And the main one that bugs me the most is probably the clouds. And in Chapter 8, there's a mechanic that's somewhat similar to the clouds in how they operate, that also is pretty bad. Corvus put out a video about Celeste, and he was like, okay, well, the clouds actually work like this. And I'm like, that doesn't make it better. Like, even if there's something that you need to learn about it in order to understand, that doesn't change the fact that instinctively I'm going to press this button at this time. And so it definitely should have operated in that way, in my opinion, just to be tighter, just to be, you don't have to, like, there's no, like, this isn't a deliberate, like, oh, it's kind of tricky to learn how these things operate game. It's a, here's your challenge. There should be no challenge. There should be no trickiness with... drop the phone. There should be no trickiness with understanding how to do the thing. It's more about just to do it. And I think that some of the mechanics in that game in particular don't necessarily do that all the time. There's also some hitbox issues sometimes with certain enemies when you want to jump on them. Most notably the Chapter 3 boss. I have a lot of trouble landing on him or dodging him a lot of times, even in the B-side, especially in the B-side for that matter, where I would just die and I'd be like, I was above him. So it's things like that, right? But those are very, very minor complaints, and I'm not going to act as if the End Is Nigh also doesn't have some of those issues. I would argue that it has them to a lesser degree, definitely. And I do think the End Is Nigh has some merits over Celeste in terms of I like the soundtrack more, but Celeste soundtrack is fantastic, but more so in terms of mechanics, in terms of everything I talked about in my End Is Nigh video that came out last year. It's about how everything you do and everything you collect in the game has some sort of purpose that comes back later on. Everything that was put in the game was put in for a reason, and that reason it affects the later parts of the game and affects how you play it. Whereas in Celeste, a lot of the things that you do, from collecting the strawberries to all these different things, right, they don't do much. A lot of times it's like, you know, you collect all these strawberries and they just feel good. They don't actually do anything, so why would I go out of my way to collect them? There's no reason to, right? It's sort of like collecting like the dragon coins or the star coins in a Mario game. They don't, and even less so, because at least star coins in the new Super Mario Bros. Games unlocked some levels. Like, you get nothing for getting all these strawberries. Nothing at all. That blew my mind. I couldn't believe that was the case. So then why are they there? What do they do? And then the way you unlock all these extra content, this extra content from the hearts to the cassette tapes and stuff like that, is super, super hidden and vague and dumb. Like, the blue hearts in the A-sides are easily, like, they're all arbitrary nonsense. There's one where you have to know a trick from another game that most people probably haven't played. It's ridiculous. There's one where in Chapter 1, you have to do this crazy pattern of dashes, and then in Chapter 6, you have to do the same pattern of dashes with very little indicator. You have to do the same thing you did in Chapter 1. It's just, it was insane. And then those are the things that unlock more content. It isn't the strawberries. It isn't the easy-to-collect, like, satisfying thing. It's the dumb nonsense, you know? But that doesn't change the fact that, look, you got this really solid blend of story and mechanics, and a lot of times games like to tell you their story. They like to say what they want you to feel. But in Celeste, somewhat like the End Is Nigh as well, but I mean, there are other games that probably make you feel what the story wants you to feel, that I can't think of off the top of my head. Celeste does it. Like, the game induces anxiety to a degree. And so when the main character feels anxiety, then you relate to that through your experience through the game. Which I find fantastic. You get anxiety from your other half because your other half is chasing you. But if you have anxiety, you get anxious about your own anxiety. That's what happens. I have friends with severe anxiety disorder. That's what happens. When you get, like, what is effectively like an anxiety attack or a panic attack is, in many cases, not induced from anything other than the simple fact that you're thinking about your own condition and getting anxious about it. And not all the time, of course. Everyone's situation is different, but I think it's very, very well executed in terms of how mechanically they make you feel the way that the main character in the story is feeling. So I think that pays off very well. A lot of the issues I have with the story in the original video, I've talked it out with people, and I actually have come to change my mind on a lot of those things. I think the story in this thing is freaking fantastic, and I think mechanically it works really well with the gameplay and the level design and so on and so forth. But there are just a few issues I have there. Okay, 3 games I want to play. because I only have 4 of the games that are good this year. 3 games I want to play. Moonlighter. This game looks amazing. Like, it just looks like a ton of fun. You're this dude, you're running a shop, and you're like the shopkeeper in a video game or something like that. But then the shopkeeper's like, I want to go on my own adventure, and then he goes and dungeon crawls and all this crazy stuff, and it plays like a 2D Zelda, and I'm really, really excited about playing it. I just haven't had the time. I haven't purchased it yet, but I'm really, really excited about that. So, looking forward to trying that before the year ends. Next one, Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon, already came out. And it was sort of this bonus game. So, like, Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night is the big Kickstarter game, right? But one of the stretch goals was an NES-inspired spin-off game that comes before it came out, which is ridiculous. The fact that they're just like, yeah, we'll have that as a whole different game as a stretch goal for our Kickstarter game. I think that's ridiculous, and I love it. But the game's freaking, apparently, fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to trying that out, because I like a lot of these old-school 2D platforming kind of stuff. I also like how some of the elements of games like Castlevania 3 are pulled into this, and I really, really like Castlevania 3, even though I haven't beaten it because it's insanely difficult. I think Castlevania 3 is the best of that original set. Having played all 3 of them and not beaten any of them. So I'm really looking forward to Bloodstained. I'm assuming it'll be easier than Castlevania 3, because most people have said it's pretty simple. So I'm looking forward to that. Still that nose itch from like 14 minutes ago. Next one is God of War, the new one on the PS4. I never played the original God of War games because I just wasn't interested, I guess. But a lot of people were saying that this game was a real pleasant surprise, and I was surprised by that, considering a lot of the changes that were made. It seemed very un-God of War in a way, but apparently they did a really good job, so I'm excited to dive into that at some point. 3 games that haven't come out yet that I'm looking forward to. Smash Ultimate. I mean, it's a Smash game. I mean, I'm not a huge Smash fan, but I like the games, and I'm going to get the next one, and we'll see how it goes. I think what will determine whether it actually ends up on like a Game of the Year kind of list is one, whether they fix some of the mechanical issues that people brought up in Smash 4 that they didn't like, and 2, which it seems like they largely will in this one, because they made a lot of nice little tweaks. And then the second one is all the other content that comes with the package, because not everyone is just going to Smash all the time. They're not going to just go up with their friends and be like, let's just fight for like hours. I find that particularly boring, to be honest. Like, a lot of my friends are like, let's play Smash. I go over or whatever, and we meet up and we just play Smash for like 3 hours, and I get bored because there's no way to change it up. It's just fight for ages. And you know, a lot of the items and custom tweaks and stuff like that are things that legit like break the game. They just don't make it fun. So what are the things you're going to add to this to add to the life of it, make it more fun, add more variety to what's going on, and not make it stupid? So we'll see what happens there. Overcooked 2. I loved Overcooked 1. I'd never owned it, but one of my friends did, and we played it every now and again, and I just had a blast. It's really goony, and I like how it's like, just like your physics are weird, and like you're just struggling, and teamwork, and it's fun times. I'm looking forward to another one of those. And then the last one is Death's Gambit, which is this Souls-like 2D game that I've been looking forward to since it was announced like years ago. It does have a lot of the like long animations and input lag and stuff like that the Souls games are known for, which I sort of mentioned with Hollow Knight. You know, compared to Salt and Sanctuary, I preferred Hollow Knight. So I'm really interested to see how Death's Gambit pans out in that regard. So we shall see, but I'm really excited about it. So that's my 20-minute rant. I'll come back and do the albums sometime. Oh, and I said a while ago I'd plug like my main channel at the end of these, so I have that. YouTube.com/MML's commentaries. Go and watch the Monopoly video or something. I got a new video coming out eventually, but like it's been a project.